Look at this. Right here on this patch of cracked concrete, next to a rusted wheelbarrow and a pile of old bricks, there are 20 black plastic bags. Each one is bulging at the sides, the plastic stretched tight, like a suitcase that has been overpacked for a long journey. And I want you to guess what is inside them. It is not trash. It is not leaves. It is not a pile of old clothes waiting for a donation bin. If I take this knife and slice one open from top to bottom, right now, you will see it. A cascade of dark, rich soil and tumbling out with it, a pile of potatoes. Clean, smooth, perfectly formed potatoes. Not a single shovel mark on them. Not a single wormhole. Not a single green patch from the sun. And I did not dig a single hole in the ground to get them. Not one. The entire crop came from bags. Bags that cost me less than a fast food lunch. Bags that have been sitting on this ugly, useless patch of concrete all summer, quietly doing the work that I used to break my back doing. And if you have ever broken your back double digging a potato trench, if you have ever bent over for an hour in the autumn mud, stabbing the earth with a fork and still slicing half your harvest in half, then you need to see exactly how this works. Because the old way of growing potatoes is not just hard. It is, honestly, kind of ridiculous once you see what a plastic bag can do. The reason you have likely never been taught this method, the reason your grandfather never mentioned it, and your local garden center certainly never pushed it, is honestly kind of annoying. It works too well and costs too little for anyone to make money from you doing it. Think about it. Go to any big box store right now and look at the potato growing section. You will see specialized felt grow bags for $15 each. You will see cedar raised bed kits for $200. You will see ergonomic titanium digging forks with a cushioned grip for $80. You will see little plastic trays and fabric pots and moisture meters and pH testers, and a dozen other gadgets that promise to make potato growing easier, all of them priced like they contain some kind of secret technology. The entire industry is built on the assumption that you need to buy structures, tools, and amendments. That you need to spend money before you can grow food. But the truth is, people have been growing potatoes in containers made from whatever they had lying around for centuries. In the Andes, where the potato first came from, the Incas grew them in terraced beds. Yes, but also in small, contained pockets of soil and straw, tucked into stone walls and rocky crevices. In European villages, people grew potatoes in old barrels, in woven baskets lined with burlap, in wooden crates destined for the fire. In Ireland, before the famine, cottagers grew them in lazy beds, which were just raised mounds of sod and seaweed, no digging required. The idea that a potato needs a vast, deeply dug field is a modern invention. It is a story sold to you by people who sell digging tools. The potato itself does not care where it grows. It only cares about darkness, moisture, and loose soil. And a plastic bag can provide all three better than almost anything else you can buy. That is the whole idea. I know exactly what you might be thinking right now. You are looking at the screen, maybe glancing at your own backyard, your own aching knees, and you are thinking that this sounds like one of those internet tricks that looks good in a photo, but falls apart in real life. You are thinking that there has to be a catch, that the potatoes in those bags are probably small, or misshapen, or full of scab, or that I am hiding the real harvest somewhere off camera. I completely understand your approach. I thought exactly the same thing until I saw it with my own eyes. For a good 15 years, I grew potatoes the traditional way. I dug trenches 2 feet deep, turning over the soil with a spade until my palms blistered and my shoulders ached. I mounted soil up around the stems as they grew, a process called hilling, which sounds charming and pastoral until you are doing it in 90-degree heat with sweat running into your eyes and dirt caked under your fingernails. I fought with wireworms, those thin orange larvae that burrow into the tubers and leave little black tunnels through the flesh. I fought with potato beetles, picking the little striped monsters off the leaves one by one and dropping them into a jar of soapy water, watching them twitch and sink. I fought with voles, those fat little underground mice that would tunnel into my potato hills and eat the centers out of every single tuber, leaving me with hollowed-out shells that looked fine on the outside and collapsed into mush in my hand. And every autumn, without fail, the harvest was a back-breaking, frustrating ordeal. I would sink my digging fork into the ground, turn over a clod of earth, and inevitably spear 2 or 3 good potatoes in the process. The forked tines would go right through them, leaving clean, starchy wounds that would rot in storage. I would end up with a bucket of damaged potatoes that had to be eaten within a week, and a smaller bucket of perfect ones, and a deep ache in my lower back that would last for days. I would stand up at the end of the day, put my hands on my hips, and wonder if it was all worth it. Hand on heart, how many of you know exactly what I am talking about? How many of you have a garden that looks like a battlefield every October, with piles of dirt and piles of leaves, and a wheelbarrow full of potatoes that are more fork than food? How many of you have stood in the kitchen, scrubbing mud off a potato and picking out the fork holes and thought, there has to be a better way? I know the feeling. I lived it for years. And then there are the so-called easy solutions. The shortcuts that everyone recommends, and none of which actually solve the problem. Let me walk you through them, because I have tried every single one, and I want to save you the trouble. The first one is the classic. Just grow them in a raised bed. Build a nice wooden frame, fill it with good soil, plant your seed potatoes. Sounds great. Sounds tidy and organized and modern. But a raised bed is just a trench with extra steps. You still have to bend over to plant. You still have to bend over to hill. You still have to bend over to harvest, unless you build the bed waist high, and by the time you buy enough lumber and soil to fill a waist-high bed, you have spent $150 to grow $40 worth of potatoes. The math does not work. The second solution people love is the straw method. Just lay your seed potatoes on top of the ground and cover them with a thick layer of straw. No digging at all. The potatoes grow in the straw, and at harvest time you just pull back the straw and pick them up. This one sounds perfect on paper. It sounds like the kind of thing a permaculture guru would teach at a weekend workshop. But here is what nobody tells you. Straw is a magnet for mice. You have just built the rodent equivalent of a luxury hotel with an all-you-can-eat buffet. The mice will move in, they will breed, they will raise their little mouse families, and they will eat your potatoes from the bottom up. And you will not know until you pull back the straw and find nothing but hollow skins and mouse droppings. The third solution, and this is the one that makes me shake my head every time, is the old folk remedy of pouring boiling water on the weeds, or using vinegar, or using salt. These are weed killers, not potato growers, but people try to apply the same philosophy to every garden problem. They want a harsh, chemical, scorched earth solution. They want to nuke the problem from orbit. And with potatoes, the harsh solution is to just buy them from the store and forget about growing your own. That is the ultimate giving up. It is like curing a headache by cutting off your head. Technically it works, but is it a reasonable solution? And the fourth solution, the one that finally broke me, is the one where you just accept that growing potatoes is hard work, and you do it anyway because that is what a real gardener does. That is the one I followed for a decade and a half. That is the one that nearly made me quit gardening altogether. It is the solution of resignation, the solution of the martyr, the solution that says suffering is part of the process. And I am here to tell you that it is not. Not anymore. And then, about 3 years ago, I was visiting a friend of mine. Her name is Mrs. Kowalska. She is in her 70s, and she has a garden that looks like it belongs on the cover of a magazine, but she does almost no visible work. It is the kind of garden that makes you suspicious, because it is too perfect. The tomatoes are always staked. The lettuce is always crisp. The beans are always climbing their poles in neat spirals. There are no weeds anywhere, and yet you never see her out there pulling them. She is always sitting on her porch, drinking tea, watching the garden like it is a television show. One afternoon, I was sitting on her back porch with her, drinking tea from a chipped cup, and I noticed a row of old plastic shopping bags lined up against the side of her garage. They were the kind of sturdy, reusable bags you get at the grocery store for $1. The kind with the flat bottoms and the reinforced handles. Each one was filled with soil, and each one had a potato plant growing out of the top, the green leaves spilling over the edges and reaching for the sun. I asked her about it, and she laughed. She laughed the way people laugh when they have known something for so long that they forget other people do not know it. She said she had been growing potatoes that way for 30 years, ever since she came to this country. She said in her home village, nobody had enough land to dig a proper potato field, so everyone grew them in sacks. Flour sacks, feed sacks, old pillowcases, anything that would hold dirt. She said, and I will never forget this, the potato is not a tree. It does not need deep roots. It needs a dark place to make its babies. Give it a dark bag and it will give you dinner. And then she reached down, tipped over one of the bags, and dumped the entire contents onto the driveway. And out rolled a dozen perfect, clean potatoes. Not one of them was damaged. Not one of them was dirty, even. They came out of that bag looking like they had already been washed. They were smooth and brown and beautiful, and they rolled across the concrete like marbles. And I just stood there, staring, because I had been breaking my back for 15 years, and this 70-year-old woman had been growing better potatoes in a shopping bag than I had ever grown in my carefully dug trenches. It was one of those moments where the whole world shifts slightly, and you realize you have been doing something the hard way for no reason at all. So here is the reveal. The secret is not a special variety. It is not a special fertilizer. It is not even a special bag, despite what the garden centers want you to believe. The secret is a plastic bag. A plain, ordinary, cheap plastic bag. The kind you probably have a dozen of stuffed in a drawer right now. The kind that costs $1 at the grocery store. The kind that you would normally throw away or use to carry laundry. That is the whole secret. That is the thing that has been hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to stop digging and start thinking. And I know it sounds too simple. I know it sounds like a gimmick. I know it sounds like the kind of thing you would see in a 5-minute craft video and roll your eyes at. But the simplicity is exactly why it works. A plastic bag is waterproof, so it holds moisture better than a terracotta pot. A plastic bag is flexible, so it can be moved around to follow the sun or to escape a frost. A plastic bag is dark, so it blocks out the light that would turn your potatoes green and bitter and mildly toxic. And a plastic bag is cheap, so cheap that you can use 20 of them and still spend less than you would on a single cedar planter. The potato does not care that the bag is not fancy. The potato does not care that the bag is not a designer felt grow bag with a logo on the side. The potato only cares that it is dark and moist and roomy enough to grow a family. And a plastic shopping bag is all three. It is the simplest, most obvious solution, and we missed it because we were too busy looking for something more complicated. Now, before you run off and start stuffing potatoes into any old bag you can find, let me give you the exact recipe. Because there is a right way and a wrong way to do this, and the wrong way will leave you with a bag full of rotten mush and a very disappointed look on your face. I learned this the hard way, so you do not have to. First, you need the right kind of bag. You want a sturdy woven polypropylene bag, the kind that reusable grocery bags are made of. Not a flimsy single-use plastic bag from the produce section. Those will rip and tear and fall apart in the sun, and by midsummer you will have a pile of soil and a naked potato plant lying on the ground. You want something with a little bit of structure to it. The bags I use are about 17 inches wide and 15 inches tall, which is roughly the size of a standard reusable shopping bag. They cost me $1 each at the grocery store. You can also use a plain plastic bucket with holes drilled in the bottom, or a burlap sack, or even an old pillowcase, as long as it is made of a breathable fabric. But the plastic bag is best because it holds moisture and it is already dark. Second, you need the right kind of soil. Do not use garden soil. This is the mistake everyone makes. Garden soil is heavy, it is full of weed seeds, and it compacts into a brick when you put it in a container. You will end up with a bag full of hard, cracked dirt that the potato roots cannot penetrate. You need a light, fluffy potting mix, the kind that is mostly peat moss or coconut coir, with a little perlite mixed in for drainage. A standard bag of potting mix costs about $8 and will fill 3 or 4 of these bags. Third, you need the right kind of potato. Not a potato from the grocery store. Store-bought potatoes are often treated with a sprout inhibitor, a chemical that keeps them from growing eyes in the produce aisle. You want certified seed potatoes from a garden center or a farm supply store. They cost about 50 cents per potato, and you need 1 or 2 per bag. If you cannot find seed potatoes, you can use organic potatoes from the grocery store, because organic ones are not treated with the inhibitor. But seed potatoes are best, because they are certified disease-free. Fourth, you need a little bit of fertilizer. Potatoes are hungry plants. They want a slow-release granular fertilizer mixed into the soil. Something like a 10-10-10 or a 5-10-10. A small bag costs about $6 and will last you all season. That is it. That is the whole parts list. Bags, soil, seed potatoes, fertilizer. Total cost for 10 bags, about $25. Less than a single dinner for two at a cheap restaurant. And you will get, from those 10 bags, anywhere from 40 to 60 pounds of potatoes. Do the math on that. It is a better return than almost anything else you can grow. Now let me walk you through the build, because the order matters. This is not complicated, but it is specific. Step 1. Put your bag somewhere it will stay for the whole season. Do not fill it first and then try to move it. A bag full of wet soil is heavy, and the handles will rip right off, and you will be left standing in a pile of potting mix with a broken bag and a bruised ego. Choose a spot that gets at least 6 hours of direct sun per day. Potatoes are sun lovers. They will grow in partial shade, but they will not produce as much. If you have a concrete patio or a gravel driveway, that is perfect. The bag does not care that there is no soil underneath it. That is the beauty of it. Step 2. Punch a few drainage holes in the bottom of the bag. Use scissors or a knife and make 4 or 5 slits about an inch long. This is critical. If the water cannot drain out, it will pool in the bottom of the bag, and your potatoes will rot. Potatoes hate sitting in water. They like moisture, but they need drainage. It is the difference between a comfortable bath and a drowning. Step 3. Fill the bag about 1/3 full with your potting mix. Do not fill it all the way to the top. You need room to add more soil later. This is the part that confuses people, but it is the key to the whole method. Step 4. Place your seed potato on top of the soil. If the potato has multiple eyes, which are the little dimples where the sprouts come from, you can cut it into pieces, as long as each piece has at least one eye. Let the cut pieces sit out for a day so the cut sides dry and callus over. This prevents rot. Then place 1 or 2 pieces on top of the soil, with the eyes facing up. Step 5. Cover the potato with about 3 inches of soil. Just enough to bury it. Do not pack it down. Just a loose covering. Step 6. Water it thoroughly until you see water running out of the drainage holes in the bottom. Then leave it alone. That is the whole planting process. It takes about 5 minutes per bag. No digging, no bending, no backache. A child could do it. In fact, my kids did do it this year, and they loved it because it felt like a science experiment instead of a chore. Now here is where it gets interesting. And here is where most people mess up. Over the next few weeks, the potato plant will start to grow. It will send up green shoots, then leaves, then a bushy little plant that looks like it belongs in a tropical greenhouse. And as it grows, you're going to add more soil. This is the hilling process, but instead of shoveling dirt around a mound in the ground, you are just dumping a scoop of potting mix into the bag. Every time the plant grows about 6 inches tall, you add enough soil to bury the bottom half of the stem, leaving the top few inches of leaves exposed. You do this over and over, week after week, until the bag is completely full. Why? Because potatoes do not grow from the roots. They grow from the buried stem. Every part of the stem that is covered in soil will produce stolons, which are little underground stems, and those stolons will produce tubers. The more stem you bury, the more potatoes you get. It is that simple. In a traditional garden, you hill the soil up around the plant, which is the same idea, but it is messy, and the soil erodes away with every rain. In a bag, the soil stays exactly where you put it. No erosion, no compaction, no weeds. The bag is a perfect little hilling machine. And here is the thing that gets me every time. The plant does all the work. You are just adding soil and water. That is it. No weeding, because there are no weeds in a bag of fresh potting mix. No digging, because the harvest is just a matter of tipping the bag over. No pests, because the bag is off the ground, away from the voles and the wireworms. The whole process is almost embarrassingly easy. And the result, when you finally dump it out, is a pile of perfect, clean potatoes that look like they came from a magazine photo. Let me tell you about my first year doing this, because I want you to understand what you are actually getting into. I set up 20 bags on the concrete pad next to my garage. It was a spot that had been completely useless for years. Nothing grew there. It was just cracked, ugly concrete, the kind of place where you park a wheelbarrow and forget about it. I filled the bags, planted the potatoes, and then I mostly forgot about them. I watered them when the soil felt dry, which in the heat of summer was about every other day. I added soil as the plants grew, a scoop here and a scoop there. And that was it. No weeding. No pest control. No digging. The plants grew tall and green and healthy. They flowered, which is a sign that the tubers are starting to form underground. And then in late summer, the plants started to turn yellow and die back. That is the signal. That is the moment every potato grower waits for. The plant is telling you that the potatoes are done growing, and they are ready to harvest. So I stopped watering, waited about 2 weeks for the skins to toughen up, and then I started the harvest. And this is where the magic happened. Instead of spending a whole weekend with a digging fork and a wheelbarrow, I just walked over to the first bag, grabbed it by the bottom, and tipped it over onto a tarp. The soil spilled out, and there, sitting on top of the pile, were the potatoes. Clean, perfect, unblemished. I did not have to dig for them. I did not have to sift through the dirt. They were just there, lying on the surface, like they had been waiting for me. I ran my hands through the soil and found more and more and more. From that first bag, I got about 4 pounds of potatoes. From 20 bags, I got close to 80 pounds. 80 pounds of potatoes from a patch of concrete that had been useless my entire life. And the best part, the part I still cannot get over, is that I did not have to wash them. They came out of the bag clean because the potting mix was clean. No mud, no clay, no grit. Just smooth, brown potatoes ready to be stored. Now I promised you the science, because I know you are the kind of person who wants to understand why something works, not just that it works. And the science here is actually very elegant. A potato plant is a survivor. It evolved in the high Andes, where the soil is thin and rocky and the weather is harsh. It learned to grow in small pockets of organic matter, in crevices, in places where the soil was loose enough to push through. It never needed deep, rich soil. It needed exactly what a plastic bag provides. A confined, dark, moist environment where the tubers can form without obstruction. When you grow potatoes in the ground, they have to push against the weight of the soil. They have to navigate around rocks and roots and hardpan. They have to compete with weeds and soil-borne diseases. In a bag, there is nothing to fight against. The soil is loose and fluffy. The tubers can expand in every direction, forming those beautiful, round, smooth potatoes that you see in the grocery store. The bag also creates a microclimate. The plastic walls absorb heat from the sun, warming the soil and speeding up growth. The drainage holes prevent waterlogging. The dark color of the bag blocks out light, which prevents the formation of solanine, the green compound that makes potatoes bitter and toxic. And because the bag is above ground, it is insulated from the cold soil below, which means you can plant earlier in the spring and harvest later in the fall. It is, in every measurable way, a better environment for a potato than the ground itself. That is not hyperbole. That is just physics. And here is the other thing, the thing that really gets me. This method is not just easier. It is more productive. A single potato plant grown in a bag will produce, on average, about 3 to 4 pounds of potatoes. A single potato plant grown in the ground, in average garden soil, will produce about 2 to 3 pounds. The bag wins, and it wins because the plant is not wasting energy fighting against compacted soil. It is not losing water to evaporation from a wide open field. It is not competing with weeds for nutrients. All of its energy goes into making tubers. I have seen single bags produce 6 pounds of potatoes when the conditions were right. 6 pounds from a bag that cost $1. That is a return on investment that would make a stockbroker weep. And you can do it anywhere. On a balcony, on a rooftop, on a driveway, in a tiny urban backyard where there is no soil at all. You do not need land. You do not need tools. You do not need any special skills. You just need a bag, some dirt, and a potato. That is the whole secret. That is the thing that the garden industry does not want you to know, because they cannot sell you a bag for $50 if you already have one for $1. Let me give you a few more details, because I want you to succeed on your first try, not your third. First, do not overwater. This is the most common mistake. People think that because the bag is above ground, it needs constant watering. But the plastic actually holds moisture very well. Stick your finger into the soil. If the top inch is dry, water it. If it is still damp, leave it alone. More potatoes are killed by overwatering than by drought. Second, do not use garden soil. I said this before, but I am saying it again because it is that important. Garden soil in a container becomes a brick. The roots cannot breathe, the water cannot drain, and the whole thing turns into a foul-smelling swamp. Use potting mix. It is light, it is fluffy, and it is designed for containers. Third, do not plant too early. Potatoes are frost-sensitive. Wait until the danger of hard frost has passed in your area. The soil in the bag warms up faster than the ground, so you can plant a week or two earlier than your traditional planting date, but do not push it. A late frost will kill the top growth and set the plant back weeks. Fourth, do not harvest too early. It is tempting, when you see the plants flowering, to dig around and see what is happening. Do not do it. The potatoes are still growing. Wait until the plants turn yellow and start to die back. That is the signal that the tubers have reached their full size, and the skins are starting to set. If you harvest too early, the skins will be thin and fragile, and the potatoes will not store well. Let them finish. Patience is a virtue, especially in the garden. And one more thing, a caution I learned the hard way. Do not let the bags sit in standing water. If you place them in a low spot where rainwater collects, the bottom of the bag will wick up that water and stay soggy, and the potatoes at the bottom will rot. Put a couple of bricks or a wooden pallet under the bags to keep them elevated. It is a small thing, but it can save your whole harvest. Now let me talk about scaling, because once you see how easy this is, you are going to want to do more. And I want you to do more. This year I am running 40 bags. 40 bags on the same concrete pad, next to the same garage. I am growing 3 different varieties. A red-skinned one for roasting, a yellow-fleshed one for mashing, and a fingerling for salads. The beauty of the bag method is that you can grow different varieties side by side, without them getting mixed up. Each bag is its own little ecosystem. You can even label the bags with a permanent marker, so you know exactly what is inside. And when it comes time to harvest, you do not have to do it all at once. You can harvest one bag at a time, as you need them. Fresh potatoes on demand, from July through October. That is something you cannot do with a traditional garden, where the whole crop comes in at once, and you have to dig it all up and store it. With bags, you just leave them in the bag until you are ready. The potatoes will keep in the soil for weeks, even months, as long as the weather is cool. It is like having a root cellar on your patio. And here is the final thing. The thing I want you to take away from all of this. We stopped thinking about potatoes. We stopped experimenting. We accepted the idea that growing potatoes means digging trenches and breaking backs and fighting pests. We accepted it because that is what we were told, and because the people who sell us tools and chemicals have no incentive to tell us otherwise. But the truth has been there all along, hiding in plain sight, in the shopping bags and feed sacks and old pillowcases of people like Mrs. Kowalska, people who did not have the luxury of a big garden, who had to make do with what they had, and who discovered, through necessity, that the potato does not care about the container. It only cares about the conditions, and the conditions it wants are so simple, so basic, that we overlooked them for generations. We are not afraid to experiment here. We are not afraid to question the so-called experts. We are not afraid to grow potatoes in plastic bags on a slab of concrete. And we are not afraid to share what we have learned, because this knowledge belongs to everyone. It does not belong to the garden centers. It does not belong to the tool manufacturers. It belongs to you, and to me, and to every person who has ever wanted to grow their own food without breaking their back. So here is what I want you to do. Go to your closet. Find those old reusable shopping bags that are gathering dust. Go to the garden center and buy a bag of potting mix and a few seed potatoes. And then this weekend, plant your first potato bag. It will take you 10 minutes. It will cost you less than a coffee. And in 3 months, when you tip that bag over and watch a pile of perfect potatoes spill out onto the ground, you will understand. You will understand why this method was hidden from you. You will understand why the old ways are often the best ways. And you will never, ever dig a potato trench again. I have been gardening for over 15 years, and I have tried just about every method there is. I have dug trenches. I have built raised beds. I have experimented with straw and compost and every fertilizer under the sun. And I can tell you, hand on heart, that the plastic bag method is the single best way I have ever found to grow potatoes. It is not a gimmick. It is not a fad. It is a proven technique that has been used for centuries, and it works. The atmosphere holds roughly 37 million billion gallons of fresh water, just floating there, waiting to be captured. And the potato, that humble, ancient tuber, is just waiting for a dark place to grow. Give it a bag. Give it some soil. Give it a little water. And it will give you dinner. That is the whole idea. No bills, no infrastructure, and no asking anyone's permission. Just you, a bag, and a potato. The way it was always meant to be. I want you to think about everything else in your garden the same way. What other plants are you making harder than they need to be? What other crops are you growing the hard way? Because that is how everyone has always done it. The tomato does not need a fancy cage. It needs a sturdy stake and a little pruning. The lettuce does not need a deep bed. It needs a shallow pot and some afternoon shade. The cucumber does not need a trellis from a catalog. It needs a piece of string and a sunny wall. We have been sold a version of gardening that is complicated and expensive and labor-intensive. And the truth is, it does not have to be any of those things. The truth is, the best solutions are often the simplest ones. The ones that have been hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to stop and notice. The ones that cost almost nothing and work almost perfectly. The ones that our grandmothers knew and our grandfathers forgot. The plastic bag potato is just one example. There are dozens more. And once you start looking for them, you will find them everywhere. So here is my challenge to you. This weekend, plant one potato bag. Just one. See what happens. Watch it grow. Add soil as it gets taller. Water it when it is dry. And then in the fall, tip it over and see what you have. I promise you, you will be amazed. And then next year, you will plant 10. And the year after that, 20. And before you know it, you will be the one on the porch, drinking tea, watching your neighbor struggle with his digging fork and smiling to yourself because you know the secret. You know that the potato does not need a field. It just needs a bag. And now you know it too. If this video helped you, if it saved your back or your wallet or just your sanity, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to see it. Share it with a friend who complains about their garden every spring. Share it with the neighbor who is still digging trenches. Share it with your grandmother and watch her smile because she already knows. And if you want to see more of this kind of forgotten wisdom, the kind that saves you money and effort and makes you look at your garden in a whole new way, then stick around. There is plenty more where this came from. The old ways are not lost. They are just waiting to be remembered.